I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Kaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I'm doing this follow-up to address a couple of things I've seen mentioned in the comments of my Godzilla vs. Mothra analysis video. The one in which I go through the plot and point out how the human cast is perhaps the most useless human cast in the whole Godzilla series, to the point where they really don't have any effect on the plot at all. That was the main idea, at least. There are a couple of things that maybe try to challenge that point that I'll be addressing, but there are other things I want to address as well, hence this follow-up. First of all, I noticed a few comments that were responding to the video as though it were some kind of really negative review, sort of like I was doing an atomic roast of it. And there is a bit of a similar formula to the atomic roast in that it's a recap, and I am pointing out certain things that can be taken as negative, but I want to make it clear that wasn't actually my intent with the video. Godzilla vs. Mothra, or Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth, is not my favorite of the Godzilla movies. I find it to have, like I said, a very useless human cast, and I never really felt like it sat comfortably in the Heisei timeline. It seems to forget certain things, like at the end, for example, when a big deal is made out of how an asteroid is going to hit in 1999 and going to completely destroy the planet. Well, in the previous movie, we had time travelers from the 23rd century come back and tell us that the future is a very bright and prosperous one. So, I'm not too worried, are you? But all that aside, I don't feel like Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth was roast-worthy. It doesn't rank very high for me as one of my favorite Godzilla movies, but it doesn't rank low enough to warrant true bashing. Not the way Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah did, let me tell you. So, again, not my favorite Godzilla movie, but this wasn't really meant as a negative review, and I'm never out to get anyone or attack anyone who does enjoy it. That's never my intention. I've also noticed some comments talking about how they feel Godzilla was also a pointless addition in this movie. Like, it didn't make sense for him to be the top-billed character and to even be in the movie at all, when the real focus should have been on Mothra and Batra. In fact, I've actually heard this argument made against Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth before, that it felt like Godzilla didn't really belong in there. However, I don't necessarily think Godzilla is completely out of place. I do think there is a way you can look at the movie and see how he fits in. But given how much this movie loves to talk about its messages, and given that it doesn't outright state this, it could be I'm just reading too deeply into the film, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But here's how you could look at it. We have to see the monsters in a somewhat symbolic way. Mothra represents Earth in harmony. Everything working together, the environment, the animals, the people, what the people develop, it's all balanced, all making a great paradise, a lovely place for people to live. However, we get from the backstory that the ancient human civilization, which was like sci-fi Atlantis levels of advanced, did stuff that started wrecking the environment, and in response, Earth made Batra. And Batra, let's not forget, is not evil, but he does represent nature's fury. He was created to strike back at humanity, but it's such a strong reaction that it's going to cause just as much damage. It's sort of like somebody who lives in the same building as you punches you in the face, and so in retaliation, you burn the entire building to the ground with him inside of it just to get back at him. Sure, you're the one who was initially wronged, but that response can't really be properly justified. So that's why Mothra steps in, puts Batra in his place, puts humanity in their place as well, and restores Earth to a state of harmony. But of course now, in the present of the film, Earth is in a state of disharmony again. Things were so out of whack that a random action, a random meteor falling to Earth, knocked over a whole row of dominoes, as Snazzy put it, that is causing all kinds of chaos. Mothra's going to have to come back because Batra's come back, but now there's a new factor, Godzilla. And Godzilla, similar to Batra, represents the consequences of human actions, but he wasn't made by the Earth. In the Heisei timeline, he is 100% a result of human interference. Even though he started as a regular dinosaur, he became Godzilla because of human interference. And he has no interest in fighting for anyone other than himself. So he is the ultimate negative consequence, something that will go against both Mothra and Batra. Hence why Mothra has to convince Batra to work with her as opposed to working on his own to stop both her and Godzilla. And when you get to the end where Batra dies and Godzilla plummets into the sea clinging to his body and Mothra seems to seal them both there, that can sort of be symbolic of nature's fury has been quelled, mankind's sins have been forgiven, and balance has been restored. If that's what was intended. I don't necessarily know if that really is what they wanted to do because, again, the movie loves to hear itself talk about its themes, but that particular theme isn't spoken about in any blatant terms, so I don't know. That's how I read into it. I think you can look at that and say that Godzilla does still belong there, but I can definitely understand why it didn't come across, because it really doesn't when you get right down to it. And here's the big one, the really big thing that I wanted to address. The one instance where people have argued that humanity does have an impact on the plot, which is the act of moving Mothra's egg. Now, I thought I'd cover that by stating that, technically speaking, Mothra, after she hatches, goes right back to Infant Island, so it's like she'd never been moved at all. And as far as the Cosmos staying on the ship and being brought back to the mainland, they easily could have left based on what we see them do at the end of the film, but for some reason they didn't. And I don't count the Cosmos as part of the human cast. They are literally not human, and they serve more as an extension of the Kaiju side of the plot. So that is entirely their choice. That was my argument. But it's been pointed out by a few people that maybe that argument doesn't quite hold up. So let's see whether or not the responses actually make sense. We'll start with the Cosmos side of things. First of all, it is stated that the humans moving the Cosmos is a significant detail, and the Cosmos could not fly to Mothra for some reason. Even though they do fly to her at the end, people have tried putting forward several different explanations as to why they couldn't do it at that point. The fact that there are so many explanations leads me to think that maybe there really isn't an explanation other than because the script said so. But among the explanations are things like it is too far, the flight at the end was more for visual appeal than it was for any sort of plot-related reason, or because the Cosmos are only able to interact that way with the adult Mothra and not with the larval Mothra. Now, as far as the whole flying at the end thing being strictly for visual appeal, if it was strictly for visual appeal, then it shouldn't have been added because all it does is introduce a plot hole. But I see no reason why we're not supposed to take that scene literally, so we can set that particular counter-argument aside. As for having less of a connection to Marvel when she's in her larval state, I don't see how that makes any sense either. The Cosmos are still clearly able to communicate with Mothra supernaturally while she's still a larva, because there's no other way their voices could have carried that far when they're singing for help, you know. So I really don't see how this argument fits in. My feeling is that if the Cosmos have a connection with Mothra, it doesn't matter what state Mothra is in, that connection remains, and they should be able to interact on the same level no matter what. As far as the whole distance thing goes, well, let's put these two shots side by side. We have the ship looking at Mothra as a larva as she's swimming away, and we see Mothra on the airfield with a human crowd, which the Cosmos are standing directly in front of, standing at a distance. To me, that looks like roughly the same distance between where the humans and Cosmos are and where Mothra is. In fact, the airfield looks like it might be even a little bit further. So again, I see no reason why the Cosmos couldn't have flown there. But I'll play along for a moment. Let's assume that the Cosmos, for whatever reason, really couldn't fly from the ship to Mothra, if not all the way back to Infant Island. Do you know what the Cosmos can still do? They can talk. The whole reason the egg was being moved was because the Cosmos agreed the egg would be safer on mainland Japan. But there's no longer an egg because it hatched, and Mothra, which is the important thing about that egg, has gone back to Infant Island. So logically, the Cosmos really should have said, well, so much for that plan. Would you mind kindly turning the ship around so you can drop us back off on our home, please? Why didn't they? We're never given a reason. They should have, though. They really didn't have any other reason to keep going all the way to Japan. In fact, you might argue it's more important that they stay with Mothra now that she's hatched, especially given all the stuff that's going on. And Ando's plan of kidnapping them isn't actually hatched, if you'll pardon me for saying so. He doesn't actually come up with that plan until after they're on land, and he's already gone on a bender, getting himself completely drunk and feeling sorry for himself that he screwed up getting the egg. So it's not like he's bringing them along because he's subtly nudging the plan in that direction, like, maybe if I have lost the egg, I can still make up for it with this. He doesn't come up with that while they're still on the ship. He comes after that well after they've returned to dock and have gone back to somewhat daily life. So, again, I see this as something that is done entirely by the Cosmos. They choose not to return to Infant Island and choose to go to Japan. Why they choose to go to Japan is beyond me as far as internal story logic goes. But what about just the simple act of moving the egg? The counter-argument goes that by moving the egg, that attracts Godzilla, who attacks and forces Mothra to hatch. And of course then Batra shows up. Now, as far as forcing Mothra to hatch, I don't think so. Remember, Mothra had to intervene when Batra showed up in the film's backstory, which of course we never see, but we are told that's what happened. Since Batra is back, Mothra hatching is an inevitability. She was always going to hatch. The fact that she hatched while Godzilla was attacking doesn't necessarily mean that Godzilla forced it to happen. And as far as the idea that moving the egg lured Godzilla to that spot, I'm not so sure that's true either. Think about it. The egg hasn't gotten that far from the island. The island is still in sight when the battle happens. And Godzilla is already there. He woke up way at the beginning of the movie when the meteor first struck. Yet for some reason he doesn't go around attacking mainland Japan. Instead, he swam towards Infant Island. Why would he be swimming there? It seems to me like he was always going there because he wanted to deal with Mothra while she was still in a weakened state, or maybe even before she could hatch. And it's logical to assume Batra was on his way there as well and stopped in mainland Japan on the way. So, technically speaking, moving the egg away from the island only changed the location of where that first three-way tussle happens. It doesn't necessarily mean that Godzilla and Batra wouldn't have shown up had the egg not been moved, because the egg was already exposed. We have to assume that because of Kaiju logic, they already knew it was there, and they already were on their way to deal with it. Why else would they be there? But let us once again play along. Let us speculate about a version of the movie where the egg doesn't get moved. It remains on Infant Island, and the Cosmos remain there with it. From there, we can still have Godzilla show up to try destroying the egg, and Mothra hatches in response, or hatches because she was going to hatch anyway, and she and Godzilla have a brief encounter before Batra appears to challenge Godzilla, and technically speaking, there is no reason that fight cannot move from land into the water. Heck, it doesn't even need to get to the land. Godzilla could see Batra coming from the ocean and wade back into it to confront him there, and still have the same outcome where he and Batra fight so vigorously that the earth splits and swallows them up. From there, of course, you can still have them separated underground, swim through the Earth's mantle, emerge in mainland Japan, and converge in a city, and then Mothra, who would have metamorphosed on the infant island, can still make her way to that spot so you can keep your urban battle. So, by not moving the egg, we don't really have that big of a change. The biggest change is that Mothra doesn't cause any destruction of her own. Now, with that in mind, can we really say that the action of moving the egg a mile or two away from the island is that significant of a thing for the humans to do? Because like I said, I just presented you with a scenario in which they don't move the egg, and you can still have the film play out more or less the same way, only this time Mothra doesn't have any blood on her wings. I just don't feel like that counts as enough of a significant contribution to really say that it undoes the whole argument that the cast is completely useless. It's almost something they do, but it's not something that actually means anything. And again, as far as keeping the cosmos on the ship, I stand by the interpretation that that is the cosmos decision, not the humans' decision. So that's what I really wanted to address, and I hope I've clarified why I still stand by everything I said in that initial video. I suppose I could have been a little more thorough and addressed these sort of things beforehand. They just didn't occur to me while I was writing the script. Now that I had them all presented to me, I have addressed them to the best of my ability, and I hope it all makes sense. And with that, time to move on to other projects. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Kaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.